Welcome in to Moving the Chains, brought to you by Founders Federal Credit Union. I'm Kevin Thomas alongside Drell Hendricks. We've got a great interview today, a very special guest, the new head coach of the Rock Hill Bearcats, Randy Birch. Coach, how you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. Hope you guys are doing well.
We are, and we appreciate your time as well. We certainly do. If you guys are just tuning in, check us out on Facebook, Twitter/X, Instagram, YouTube, and more at Moving Chains. Our website, movingchains.com, and our podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google, and more. Coach Birch was hired in March. He was the defensive coordinator at Gaffney for the past 11 seasons. Prior, he spent time at Bowling Springs, Burns in North Carolina, and East Henderson in North Carolina. Coach, let's start there. What's that transition been like, kind of going from a DC role, an assistant role for all this time to now finally being a head coach here at Rock Hill High?
It's been challenging. It's been a fun challenge, and one of those things where you feel like you kind of almost have it, for the most part, figured out on what you want to do on one side of the ball. But it's a whole nother ball game when you start dealing with, having to say so in the offense and, with the parents and the rules and, learning a different school as far as like what time school starts, what time it gets out, what time weight training class is different. The academic piece is different at Rock Hill compared to Gaffney. So you really don't know when you take on a role at a whole different program, just kind of how the ins and outs of everything work. So it's been challenging, but it's been fun.
Coach Kevin hit the highlights in his intro about your background, but if you don't mind detailing that for us, how you got started and how you got to this point.
When I first got out of college at Western Carolina University, I went on to coach the season at East Henderson High School for Brett Chappell, who's now the head coach at Chesney High School. Done a season there, got a phone call, went back to my alma mater, Burns High School, which is right outside of Shelby, North Carolina. Spent 4 years there. Went on to Bowling Springs High School in South Carolina. Justin Clark's dad was the head coach there, and Justin also played with me at Western Carolina, so that was kind of the bridge that had me leave North Carolina into South Carolina. Did a season there. Got a phone call from Gaffney, which is 15 minutes from my hometown of Shelby, North Carolina. So ended up going over to Gaffney and was able to stay at home for the last 11, 12 years that I've been there, and that's just kind of the route I went.
Coach, you got hired maybe a little bit late in the process compared to some guys who maybe got in there before Christmas break started. But, how is that staff shaping up? Are you able to put it together completely now? Are you looking for a few guys, or what's that setup going on for you guys?
Yeah, I definitely got started much later than I wish I could have as far as the hiring process went. But our admin team did a great job of doing everything they could to help me out and making it as smooth as possible. Staff really came along. We've made some additions. I brought some guys with me. Brought Coach Matthew McMahon from Gaffney with me. He up to the offensive line. I was the JV head coach also at Gaffney. He's going to serve as our co-offensive coordinator. Comes from a history of football. His dad was a high school head coach for about 30 years. His last one was Emerald High School. Brought on Jake Bentley, who had been over at North Alabama for the last season or two. So brought him on. I hired a guy named Brandon Toms, who comes from Dinwiddie, Virginia. They just won a state championship there. I actually coached Brandon at Gaffney years ago. And then I just hired a defensive back coach named Coach Collier, and he comes over from Chesterfield in the Central area. And I just got him aboard just a couple of weeks ago. So, brought 4 or 5 guys on.
So, Coach, we've been told, in circles that our show provides some advanced scouting. So this is the section of the show where you tell us what you plan on doing this year. So if we haven't seen your defense, what do you like to run on the defense, and will you continue calling plays there? And what is the offensive plan, for the Bearcats?
Defensively, we'll look very similar to what we were doing at Gaffney over there. Me and Coach Smiley had called the defense over there for the last several years together, and enjoyed our time doing that. And so I'm going to take what me and him were doing over there together, and we're going to implement that at Rock Hill. I have a big say-so in the defensive side. Now we got hired 2 of the guys on staff became co-defensive coordinators, Joey Fowler and Tim Jones. So I've kind of gave it to those guys, and kind of navigating them kind of, how we did things at where I came from and letting them put their own twist on it to kind of fit what our personnel is and our skills are on the defensive side. But I'll definitely have a say-so on what goes on that aspect. Special teams wise, Coach Toms that I mentioned a moment ago, he's gonna kind of head up the special teams unit. I'll have a little say-so in that as well, and big on trying to block kicks, and I spend a lot of time in the special teams phase of the game. I've seen it work out for us a lot of times at my previous stop where we came away with some wins due to some blocked extra points or missed field goals and blocked punts and those things. And then offensively, Coach McMahon and Coach Bentley will be the co-offensive coordinators over there together. And those guys have been interesting to watch from my eyes as a defensive guy, just kind of their yin and yang, where Coach McMahon wants to be a lot of 11, 12 personnel and run the ball at you, do those kind of things. It's a play action game. And then, Coach Billy comes over there with a wealth of knowledge, coming from, obviously his dad's a renowned coach, and then his experiences at the college level, and, obviously played quarterback. So he wants to throw it a little more than McMahon does. And so that's been interesting to watch. And I think it's going to be a great recipe, and expect our offense to be really explosive. I can say when I first took the job, I kind of wanted to be a little more tight end H-back oriented and run the ball. Then I got there and got to see our personnel and just realized what kind of dynamic skill players we had with Malik Clark and Caden Watkins and several other guys. EJ Ratley, another great one we've got. So we just kind of went from wanting to pound the ball and run it at you to say, hey, let's get the ball to these guys in space and kind of use our running game to complement that as well.
Coach, you've been around some, historic head coaches. You mentioned Coach Chappell earlier, obviously Coach Dan Jones there at Gaffney. But who are some guys you kind of look up to maybe in the head coaching roles that you try to, really, model your style after? Maybe even some guys at the college or pro level you like to pick up tips from as well. But who are some guys you kind of keep an eye on in that space?
Well, obviously, I'd say my longest tenure was at Gaffney. So, Coach Dan Jones is, obviously I get a lot of my philosophy from the things that I learned, under him the time that I was there. I also got to spend several years there with Chris Miller. Love Coach Miller to death, and throughout the process, and since I've taken the job, I had a lot of conversations with him as well. Those are probably the two that I probably reach out to the most. And then the head coach of my alma mater, Burns High School, Coach Devine. I spent some time talking to him, and another good friend of mine is the head coach at Chase High School, Chris Cogdell. Played for Coach Cogdell, then we coached together for 3 years at my alma mater, Burns. And talk to him almost daily. So I'd say those are kind of the main guys that I speak to as far as getting some advice and leaning on for some things.
Coach Birch, you were in a great situation over there at Gaffney, and that's got to be a tough place to leave. But what did you see, in yourself, or, what was the timing like that you really felt that you were ready to be a head coach?
Being a head coach is kind of something that's, I guess, been a goal since day one of getting into the high school coaching thing. Back in 2008, Gaffney was a hard place to leave, and I looked around for a few years and tried to get a job here and there, and God didn't quite have it in His plans. And this one came over at Rock Hill High, and I'd always knew about the history of Rock Hill and what it is and what it was, and noticed the talent on tape and those kind of things. But leaving Gaffney was tough, especially with being Coach Jones last year. I really wish I could have went out with him. So. Selfishly, I wish he'd have retired this year, but I know the Indian fans are excited to have him back for one more season for sure.
Coach, a lot of folks have probably heard about four-star receiver Malik Clark, one of the best players in the state, and you mentioned a couple of other guys earlier as well. But who are some special guys you have coming back for that Bearcat team that we should really keep an eye on this year?
EJ Ratley's a returning senior, started last year for the Bearcats at wide receiver. Really, really dynamic athlete. We got another kid named Caden Watkins who primarily played on the defensive side of the ball last year. He was all region. I think he was honorable mention all state. He's going to make the transition and play a lot of offense this season. He's going to be, probably return kicks for us, line up at safety, line up at corner, play some receiver. We will probably hand it to him a little bit here and there, but he's probably going to have a breakout year, and he's going to be a household name here soon. On the defensive side of the ball, we got KT Gill McDonald at linebacker. Expected him to have a big season for us. Justice Foster at defensive line is a returning starter, along with Chris Burgess. Zion King is a returner for us on the defensive side. Played some linebacker last year. He's gonna come off the edge for us a little more this year, be able to cover some people. He's a great athlete. Then we got AJ Sanders, who's a really good cover corner for us.
Coach, you mentioned you got it to a late start, and it seems like you've really hit the ground running, since assuming the head coaching role there. But what's the biggest thing through the spring? We're getting the off-season workouts, and we're recording this in the middle of the dead period, so we're about a few weeks away from fall camp. What have you learned from your team, so far in this off-season?
Just kind of learn how tough they were, how competitive they were, how resilient they were, or they are, I should say. Surprisingly, that they were ultra fast learners. I feel like they're way ahead of what I would have expected in the short amount of time that me and the staffs kind of started implementing our offense, defense, and special teams plan. So I was really excited about how smart that our football team seemed to be.
Coach, you're going from an area where it's really a one high school town there in Gaffney. Football obviously means everything to the community there, the Indian, faithful, to a place where football is still a huge deal in Rock Hill. Obviously, football city USA, but there's a lot more schools around. It's not really a one high school town anymore. But maybe what are some similarities and differences you've seen between the two programs, and just kind of what have you noticed so far in your short time there with the Bearcats?
Well, the similarities start with the athletes, our skill players, and the way they run, jump, catch, throw, those kind of things. Those are very similar to what I experienced at Gaffney. The history of the school, Rock Hill had a time period where they were, one of the best in the state, compete for a state championship every year. So the history part, Gaffney's been like that since I think the school opened up. According to the Gaffney fans, anyway, they're the greatest team ever. So the historical part of the schools are very similar. A lot of differences. So at Gaffney's, you said it's a one school town, which is a small town. At Rock Hill's a big city, and I really didn't realize how big a city it was until I, got into the school building all the way and spent some time in the community there. So that'd be one of the biggest differences, like as far as competing for, sponsorships for the program and fundraising and things like that, with South Point being down the street, Northwestern being down the street, just trying to find, local business that's willing to support all three at times can be tough, or finding one that only supports Rock Hill and vice versa. So that's a major difference. Gaffney Stadium, I think, might be the best in the state, if not one of the top 2 or 3 in the state. The atmosphere is fantastic. District 3 is a historic stadium. It had a lot of special players and a lot of special ball games happen there. But us sharing that stadium with Northwestern was a dynamic that I never thought of I did think about it when I interviewed for the job, but when I applied for the job, it never crossed my mind. And so as you're going through the process, that's one of the questions you ask, like, how does this work with the sharing of stadium? Like, who gets to use it on Thursday for walkthrough, or do we use it for the walkthrough, or do we have to do it at our high school, practice field? So that part's a different dynamic for sure, is sharing the stadium.
Coach, you've been spending your time. You've been in Region 2 over there, Spartanburg, Cherokee County. You've been going up against Burns, Spartanburg, Dorman, beating heads against those guys for so many years. This new schedule, as we look through it, it's a bunch of teams that you're probably not as familiar with. What's the biggest adjustment in, trying to come up with game plans, doing some offseason scouting for a bunch of different opponents that you haven't seen before?
Yeah, that part's been challenging already. I've kind of started tinkering around and diving into a game here and there, just trying to get an idea of what some teams do so that we can, begin to prepare as far as, putting in some formations, plays, personnel groupings and stuff that, match what the other team's doing. So not nearly as familiar with the opponents, being down there at Gaffney for so long. We spent most of our time in Spartanburg and Greenville County. We played Clover many times when I was at Gaffney, so pretty familiar with those guys. Never played River Bluff, which is my first game of the year, so that's going to be interesting. And Coach Harden, I know, does a great job there, as he done a great job at North Myrtle Beach prior to getting there too. I've never played Lancaster before in my career. It's been several years since I've coached against Nation Forward, but a little bit familiar with them. But I believe they've got a new OC this year, different DC since the last time I've coached against those guys. So I'm sure there'll be some new wrinkles I have to prepare for with that. Fort Mill, I think we've played them once in the last 5 or 6 years, so not a lot of familiarity with those guys. Hartsville's on the schedule this year. I had no idea what Hartsville was about. Put a tape onto them the other day. Coach Calabrese is killing it. Got a tough scheme, got a tough ball club. They're big, strong, and fast. So that was going to be they're all going to be tough, but that was going to be a tough preparation. Reminds me of a different version of Tijuana, which was always a headache for us Gaffney guys.
Yeah.
So that part's definitely going to be difficult, but at the same time, I think our opponents are going to deal with that the other way around with, us bringing in 2 new offensive coordinators and bringing the defense over from Gaffney High that we ran over there and kind of making it our own at Rock Hill. So I think, those guys are going to have to deal with some of the same problems. Indian Land's another team on the schedule. Never seen them play in my life. Don't really know what they do. I haven't got to dive into those guys yet, but, I've got to check them off the list here soon.
Yeah, and I think Northwestern, the last time you played those guys, that was quite the showdown you guys had at Gaffney.
They got us pretty good this past year at Gaffney. That's always been a battle, and it could go. That's a 50-50 game. We felt like every year when I was coaching over there, and they took it to us this past season, and I think we'd got them the previous 2 or 3. So that was a battle, and so I do have some familiarity with those guys and South Point because we played both of those guys the last several years. So I got to bring some of the Gaffney stuff with me and kind of add a wrinkle or two with the personnel that we got.
Coach, given your background, the offseason can be kind of tricky with 7-on-7s, and we've introduced 11-on-11s now. You being a defensive guy, I'm sure you're not the biggest fan of 7-on-7s because you're not playing real football. But have you guys been able to do that? And, have you been able to see the level of competition that you wanted in your team so far?
Yeah, so we didn't participate in any 11-on-11s this season. Something we're looking into for possibly next year. Getting in kind of the job a little bit later than most people got going. A lot of scheduling had been taken care of. 7-on-7s, yeah, we went to UNC Chapel Hill, went over to Northwestern for their tournament a couple of weeks ago, went over to York High School a week or so ago, went to Gaffney as soon as the summer got started off. And so, yeah, 7-on-7, you want to see people block and tackle and all those kind of things there, but it's also, it's good to evaluate your quarterback and, the time and let them get some rhythm with the receivers and kind of evaluate those guys' speed and hands and knowledge. And at the end of the day, they still got to cover people defensively. So I feel like we still got some good work in, and I feel like we've had a pretty good summer up to now.
Coach, you guys, have a quarterback coming in, Ian Grissom, coming over from Louisville, who's played a lot of football, started a couple years over there for the Lions. How much does it help having a guy, even though it's maybe not in your system and Coach Bentley's system, but a guy who has played a lot of football there at the quarterback in that trigger man spot?
Anytime you get a kid that's had some varsity Friday night experience is always a blessing for the team. The other good part about it is Ian came in, and we've got another talented quarterback in Case and Canup, and those guys have been battling it out. So I think it's been great for Ian to have someone push him, and at the same time, somebody for Case to compete against. So that part was really good to bring a veteran in there, and then we got a young kid in Case, and those kids have been neck and neck all spring and off season during 7-on-7, those things there. But the experience factor is always a huge thing for sure.
Take your financial game to the next level with Founders Federal Credit Union. Reach your full potential. Relax. Join Founders today. Visit an office near you or relaxjoinfounders.com to apply. Federally insured by NCUA, member qualification required.
Coach, got a couple of easier ones here before we let you go. So maybe it's a Friday night, a home game in your office, or maybe on the bus ready for an away game. But what's on that pregame playlist as you get ready to take the field out there?
Oh, I got a pretty eclectic music selection.
Okay.
Game days, I'm probably, I'm like the kids. I want to put on some NBA YoungBoy. Sometimes I put on some old 50 Cent, some Tupac. Jay-Z's probably my all-time favorite rapper. Went to see him in concert years ago when I was a young man. And then every once in a while, I might slide a little Limp Bizkit and AC/DC on there.
True players, Coach. I think that's our first NBA YoungBoy reference by a coach, so that's pretty awesome. If you've ever listened to our program, you're getting asked this question. You've been in Rock Hill long enough. Me and Kevin are coming over there for a game. Where do we need to eat?
Oh, man, I'll tell you, I talked about the differences in, Gaffney and Rock Hill, a small town in the city. There's so many great places to eat at in Rock Hill. Had a lot of chicken wings since I've been there. I haven't had a bad chicken wing yet. So any place that sells wings has been great. Shockers is right by the school. It's been fantastic. Dixie Pig, one of my favorites. I think I heard Coach Wofford recommend that a year or so ago on your podcast. Yeah. And Dixie Pig's a place that me and the guys at Gaffney went over and dined at together last year, the year before. That place is great. Golly, guys, there's 100 places. Hobos is one of my favorite places to go to, and then Burgers and Barley. So right now, those are kind of the rotation at the moment.
But chicken wings, that's the place. Chicken wings everywhere.
Helen's Hot Kitchen, that's another great place. In the Nashville Hot, or you like fish, Helen's Hot Chicken's fantastic.
Okay.
So, Coach, Rock Hill plays in a historic stadium over there at District 3 Stadium, sharing it with Northwestern and whatnot. But the schedule's out for you guys. Is there maybe a game or a team that you're really, looking forward to playing there at D3? Or obviously, is it more of a, I'm getting ready for week 0 right now? That's kind of it.
Yeah. The first game of the year against River Bluff's the most important, without a doubt. You like to get that monkey off your back. Excited just to get the first game out of the way, no matter if you're the head coach or coordinator or position coach. But as a head coach, you're definitely looking forward to that first one and kind of seeing what kind of product you can produce. On down the road, we're going to play Lancaster High School. That one, I'm excited about that one. Coach Antoine Surratt was actually one of my position coaches in high school at Burns High School. So I'm excited to go coach against somebody who coached me. And me and Coach Surratt are still good friends to this day. But definitely week 0 against Coach Harden. Excited about that one.
I love that answer because Kevin set you up for bulletin board material, and then you brought it all the way back. So that was fantastic. He's a pro at this. Coach, before we let you go, we really appreciate your time. But what are some goals that you have for the 2024 season for this team?
Just for the guys, the main goal is for the guys to come together. Everybody, be one team, one heartbeat. For the coaches to kind of raise some men and send those seniors out on the right foot and start building this thing up to what it used to be. And I think we're pretty close to that right now. And as far as the wins and losses go, my expectation is to win every game. I don't intend to go into any game and hope we keep it close or expect to lose, those kind of things there. So I go in every week expecting to win the game, and I think at every stop I've been at, I felt like that at every game and every school.
Well, this has been great. I want everyone to go check out Coach Birch and the Bearcats program on Twitter and Facebook. They do a great job posting updates on their kids and highlights on their kids and their programs. Definitely check them out on there. Like I mentioned, follow us on Facebook, Twitter /X, Instagram, YouTube, etc. at Movin Chains. Podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google, and more. Website, movinchains.com. Moving the Chains brought to you by Founders Federal Credit Union. Jarrell, anything else for Coach? We'll let him go today.
Coach Birch, thank you so much for your time today. As I said previously, really excited to see what you're going to do with that program, and it's very well deserved. The success that you've had throughout your career. There's no telling. The sky's the limit for Rock Hill and the future of your program, and we appreciate your time again.
I appreciate you guys' time, and I appreciate you guys covering South Carolina high school football.
Appreciate that, Coach. Look forward to stopping by a practice or game, getting to see you again soon, and best of luck. All right.
Thanks, man. Come see us anytime.
Yes, sir.
Get ready for the ultimate South Carolina high school football experience with Movin the Chains. From previews to recaps, we've got you covered. Dive into our expert preview shows, predicting winners and sharing insights. Then join us post-game for the thrilling recaps, exclusive interviews, and highlights you won't find anywhere else. Plus, connect with fellow fans on our Friday night spaces on Twitter /X. No one covers South Carolina high school football like us. Join us at Movin Chains on all social media platforms and visit movinchains.com today.